James Ivory and Ismail Merchant are celebrating 21 years of filmmaking this year. And I think it's apt that the celebrations should start in Delhi, where they shot their first major feature. And we have had the celebrations beginning in Delhi this year with Heat and Dust, which is their latest and perhaps their most successful film. And for the occasion, we have had a special team coming out. Unfortunately, Jim Ivory and Madhu Jaffrey are both engaged in filmmaking and can't come, but we have a very representative team here for the occasion. So let me introduce them to you. Robin Evans of the British Council, who's one of the major donors for the occasion, will be telling you all about how the festival will travel and so on. Then there is Christopher Cazeneuve, who is one of the major stars of the film. Shashi Kapoor hardly needs an introduction. Ismail Merchant flits in and out of Delhi and also hardly needs an introduction. Jennifer, who's also one of the earliest stars in their films. And there is Nicholas Grace, who is the friend of the Nawab in Heat and Dust. Now I should imagine he's the youngest member of the team. I'll check up on that. Yes. Well, I think we should start off with Ismail, because you've been called the traveling company in the new book about you. Well, Ismail, do us a little transition from that very first shot of The Householder with a very, very young Shashi Kapoor, and the transition to Heat and Dust. I mean, what are the changes you find?
Well, there are no changes as such. I think we started, with Heat and Dust, the release of Heat and Dust is exactly like what it was The Householder 21 years ago. We started with the same problems, and we are now with the same problems. When an independent company starts making a film, it's always finance, distribution, release of the film, publicity, promotion, and this is what we've been doing for all our films. So there's nothing has changed from that point of view, but what has changed is that we are a successful team. When we started, we were relatively unknown, but now in several continents, our name and the films we have made, each time we make a film, the earlier ones become known. So with Heat and Dust, which is now playing in about, France, England, America, Australia, and doing extremely well. Really one of the biggest box office grossing films in the charts everywhere in the country, different countries. So we think in Heat and Dust in India, it's a great triumph to bring one's successful film and show it here.
Shashi, when you started off in The Householder, were you already established in Hindi films? I'm trying to remember. And how did you find the transition, and how do you still find this double life of acting in Hindi films and these films?
And English films. All right. No, I wasn't a very established star when I started out. I had been, of course, working in films since the early 60s. That's what, 1960, I think we started. No? Yeah. And it was in '62 that I started to work with Merchant Ivory Productions in The Householder, which was very good, very new, very nice. I had never worked with an English company, a film company. Of course, I had been with an English theatrical company before. It was marvelous. I had been associated with English plays and things like that, and it was nice to work with an English company. Jim and I think, clicked right from the beginning. I don't know why, but we did. It was very nice. Ismail and I didn't click. There was a little problem between us. That little, that money problem, which is still there. It's now 21 years that Ismail and I are still not clicking. I don't think we will click. But the unfortunate thing is that I still have to carry on being associated with Ismail and working with him and not being paid. I think I shall be doing that. According to Ismail, he wants me for another 20 years. So, he's given me another 20 years of lease, Very kind of him. He thinks, I should be working for another 20 years.
It'll mount up, think of that.
So, I hope he eventually pays my grandsons or great-grandsons.
Well, his son has just started his first work on The Bostonians, and he's very handsomely
It wasn't his first work. His first work was with me in 36 Charangi Lane.
No, we are talking about international.
International, yes.
That's nice. I didn't know about that.
Okay.
Now, Christopher Casanova, you were sort of comparatively new on the James Ivory Smile Merchant scene.
Yes.
And was this your first film shot in India, Heat and Dust?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, how did you react to A, the conditions for shooting here, which must be vastly different from what you're used to, the climate, the surroundings, and so on? Because I felt that, I've seen British district officials when I was a child in Assam, and you were absolutely them. And I often wonder how it is so easy, apart from being a very good actor, that you can imbibe that color, that attitude, and how did you manage it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, first of all, we were working from a marvellous screenplay. It was basically all there, I think, for the characters. But also in my career, I've never played a district officer before, but I have kind of been involved in several kind of television series and films which revolved around the sort of colonial area. So I suppose, imbibed a lot through reading, through research for those things over the years. So, in a curious way, it didn't feel that strange. I sort of felt as though I did know.
And you did speak your own Hindustani, did you? Or was it
That was my voice, yes.
I thought so, because you were meant to speak broken Hindustani.
Yes.
I thought it was you.
It definitely was.
Now we'll cross over to Harry, as you are in the film. And now you had to even don Indian attire at one stage, didn't you? First appear in a turban. and
Yes,
so
first of all in a turban at the Durbar. That was because when James and I discussed the character, we both agreed that there was a lot in Harry that despised the people in the British Raj. So whenever there was an opportunity in the film, I tried to show how much Harry liked the Indian culture and tried to assimilate it himself. So it was that lovely picnic sequence when we go to Baba Firdaus, I think it is. And so we'll put on some Indian clothes for that as well, for the picnic sequence.
Now, unfortunately, the two heroines haven't been able to come out. But how did you cast them? How did you think of them? This is said to be your favorite film, incidentally.
Well,
The book says so.
that's right. And Julie Christie was the first choice of Jim and myself. And we approached her, and she said she'd love to, because that was her favorite novel. And the character from the screenplay also had, given her, enough to portray Anne's part in the film. And then the casting of Olivia was the most difficult one,
She was
because
splendid. I mean, how did you discover her? I think
well, just 3 days before we left for India, she arrived from Germany. She was making a film there, and she came, and instantly, Jim and I responded to her and said that she would be the most perfect Olivia. And in
She was
film
indeed.
now, everyone says that she's just marvelous, and she's gone on to doing marvelous things now.
Now, Jennifer, you are a Westerner by birth, but you have married in India, you've lived here. I need hardly tell you there has been a lot of controversy, talk, arguments about Jhabwala's books on India, whether they're anti-Indian. I didn't feel that one bit about Heat and Dust, which I felt about some of her other books. If not anti-Indian, perhaps a little sarcastic or whatever. I mean, that's the way I react, whether you agree or not. Now, you are both East and West. What have you felt about these films? I mean, have you felt that they rub up India the wrong way, or?
Well, I don't think they intend to rub India the wrong way. I'm a fan, first of all the Merchant Ivory films, so it's very difficult for me to be objective. But Ruth writes very much from the same point of view as I would, because our situations are similar. I mean, we are both foreigners who have lived here for a long time. I identify very strongly with her point of view. I don't find her overcritical. I think when she's critical with a great deal of affection, which is my own reaction, and how, if I were a writer, this is how I would write about the country. I don't understand the overreaction, which we do find occasionally, to her writing. It mystifies me completely.
But I think there can really be, personally speaking, any controversy about Heat and Dust. I think it's very fair, whether criticizing or appreciating something about both the communities, their hardships or their problems. And I think the very gentle humor which is typical of both Ruth and the films by Merchant and Ivory, I think it really, in a way, integrates the two communities, I mean,
Well, yes.
makes them come together. Now, I think we've left you out, Robin. I think since this festival is traveling to various other cities, would you tell us a little bit about whether the same program will be carried out. There are, I think, 5
Six.
I think, in fact, we're showing 6 feature films. Let me begin by saying that the British Council is, of course, in the business of Indo-British collaboration. And we seized on this initiative from Ismail as being a very good example of Indo-British collaboration, productive collaboration, over a good many years. The Merchant Ivory team has produced many successful feature films over this long period, many of which do concentrate on the relationship in various ways between East and West. Heat and Dust, of course, is an excellent example of this. So is Shakespearewala. So we welcome this, and we're touring the films around to Bombay, Madras, Calcutta, and they will be subsequently seen in Bangalore and Hyderabad.
Now, one of the things I feel, Ismail, and I'm very happy that you have included at least 2 of my favorite shorts in this festival, is I think that the real attitude of either both of you, all 3 of you as filmmakers, in this case I think Ruth doesn't come into all of them, but Helen and then Queen of the Nautch Girls, and the Madhu Jaffrey and James Mason, an autobiography of a princess. I think they're wonderful films. In fact, I sometimes feel that your shorts may survive even longer than your features. Not a very kind thing to say, but I mean they're so authentic, your shorts, the way they express feelings about whether it's Helen's professional life and her personal life, or this wonderful performance by Madhu as an ex-princess living in London. I think that it is really your shorts which have always fascinated me more in a way.
Well, I think the main thing is that whether you talk about Autobiography of a Princess, which is not actually a short film, it's has so many elements like fiction and fact together, and it is, you know, like a novella, you know,
Yes.
a novel and a novella. So it's Autobiography of a Princess is a novella, you know, in that range. And I think that Shakespearewala is a classic. I mean, that film anywhere in the world, I mean, it's been talked about, seen for, you know, many times. We are identified with Shakespearewala. Now we were identified with the Europeans. Then we are identified now with Heat and Dust. I think the work of James and Ruth and myself as a company and a writer, director, producer is a very unique position in cinema today. There isn't a team like ours, or, I mean, people, critics, everyone says that, well, we have established an identity in the cinema world, whether it is America, whether it is Europe, or whether it is India, our own identity. And we will be measured, you know, from the point of view of history is written about cinema, we'll be measured in a very special way.
And nobody has been associated for that long, I think, certainly as scriptwriter and director and producer, in the history of cinema, perhaps.
Well, we are in the Guinness
21
Book of
years.
Record now.
I see.
Really?
Really? Congratulations. I didn't know that.
That's right.
I
think-
mean, what for?
Yes.
For not paying accuracy.
Largest
Now,
outstanding
coming
goal.
to your other films, Quartet, which is in the festival, and also the Europeans. Now, here you have Henry James and you have
Jean Rhys,
Jean
which
Rhys.
is-
And they're very elegant films and in a way quite different. Now, do you find these sorties into other cultures?
Well, it's again, you know, the Europeans, you know, the European cousins, two Europeans visiting American cousins in America. That is a kind of, again, cross-culture, the naivety of the Americans at that time, and the very sophisticated Europeans visiting the Americans, and, you know, that kind of a relationship between, again, Europe and America. And in Quartet, you know, the expatriate English, you know, living in the Parisian world of the 20s. And I think it is, this of course is again our thing about the Wild Party, is set in Hollywood of the 20s.
Yes, that
And-
was an extraordinary film. I mean, extraordinary subject. You suddenly veered over to that.
Yes, and also Raquel Welch gives the best performance of her career in this film. And she and James Kirker, and again, you know, Hollywood of that period and that time has been very well captured, as you can see, you know, the number which she's performing right now.
Sometimes I think that Jim is at his most at home in period films, especially the 20s. You know, he seems to fit into that period almost, and he loved the dresses, the hairstyles, the decor. You know, it's always something he seems to revel in, and in fact linger over quite a bit.
Well, I think that one wants to document certain things, and that particular period was so rich. The 20s in Hollywood was so rich with all these glamorous stars, and the musical numbers, and I mean that actually gives a fascination to a filmmaker, and particularly if you recreate that atmosphere, in the most proper way. I mean, there you are. That's an achievement.
Now, Sashi, you got to do some talking now, and no mention of money anymore. No, it's of course the root of all evil. But Sashi, now you lead almost a triple life, because you do films in Hindi, which they are called art films, and you do the commercial films, and you do the James Ivory Ismail films. Which do you enjoy most? On which are you most relaxed?
Well, let's first decide about art films and commercial films. I mean, there is no such thing as an art film. There is a good film and a bad film.
Okay.
Okay. So I mean, I work in all kinds of films, good, bad, indifferent films. I've been doing that for, Jesus, about 100 years. Anyway, and I am trying to produce good films as a producer. I'm on that path towards making good films. Now, as far as enjoying what I'm doing is concerned, I mean, I do sometimes enjoy even the bad films that I do. It's great fun, actually, to laugh at something or to giggle at something. But I do enjoy, I mean, I have really enjoyed being with Merchant Ivory Productions as an actor. I don't know about that, but the other thing, I mean, as a man.
No.
But okay, I won't start. No, it's been
Jim
great
as a
fun.
director?
Jim as a director is very nice with me, very fine with me. I mean, he gives me the freedom to be able to do what I want. And except for Heat and Dust, in Heat and Dust we did have a certain kind of a clash, because he would insist on something, and he would, but I suppose maybe he was right in a way, because I mean, director is after all the captain of the ship. He is supposed to know what he really wants, and well, sometimes Jim knew that. And it was nice to be associated with Jim and Ismail as far as acting in their films was concerned. What else do you want to know?
I'll tell you what, this should be a question to Ismail, but maybe he's too involved, which you would not be in this context. And that is, to what do you attribute this remarkable phenomenon that right from the start, Satyajit Ray helped them with the incidental music for Shakespeare Wala. He helped them with the cutting of Householder. They were unknown. They were trying an entirely new style of filmmaking. What do you think attracted so many Indian artists and really top people to this team?
Well, Ismail is a kind of a magician. He's a bad man, but he has this kind of charisma. He has this magic with which he gets people that he wants. Whether it's Christopher Reeves or Vanessa Redgrave or Julie Christie or Raquel Welch or Shashi Kapoor or Madhur Jaffrey or Christopher Cazenove, or Nicholas Grace or anyone. I mean, Nicholas Grace and I were never ever going to work with Jim again or Ismail again. No. But I think we will eventually now, because we've calmed down, we've cooled down, you see, that kind of thing. So he has that charisma, and so that's how he gets people. That's how he eventually, I mean, he got right from the beginning, he got Ruth involved, and he got Satyajit Ray Sahab involved, and he got lots of other people involved. Vilayat Khan Sahab, Ali Akbar Khan, Ravi Shankar Sahab, everyone, call their name. I mean,
anybody you can think of.
Zakir
Yes.
Hussain, I mean, name them, and he's got them, you see. I mean, he eventually, I think, will be able to get the English gods and the American gods and the Hindu gods also to work with him.
They must be
free.
very sweet people to
free.
do that. There must
Note
be
that.
something special about them. I think they've retained their modesty and a good deal of style throughout. And I think they've done an excellent job of public relations for India, if I may say so. I've seen them in operation at festivals, Berlin,
Yes,
when Madhur
that
won
was
the
the first
prize,
one.
and
Oh, yeah.
at Cannes with Quartet, and you were there too,
Yes.
remember? And I think that you do, Ismail, keep up this Indianness, though you've acquired a slight American accent.
Have
Now,
I?
yes, indeed you have. At least maybe we notice it. Now, Jennifer, going back to Shakespeare Wala, it is, of course, a classic, and your entire family, it probably inspired the film, and you were all in it. I think this is an interesting case of Felicity becoming an international actress from Shakespeare Wala, because she went on to that thing with Gielgud in London
Yes, she did
immediately
the
afterwards.
Mayflower and the
Yes.
Frog, yes. Well, she couldn't have been much of an international actress much earlier. She was only 17 when she did
That's true.
Shakespeare.
Yes, yes. So it does work in both directions. I mean, they may have got the best people, but they've given some very good people also. They've
Absolutely.
discovered some people. I think,
Absolutely, right from the beginning.
Well, I think also, like working with major actors or major stars, one has this opportunity of introducing new actors who become stars. I mean, Felicity Kendall, on to now Greta Skaki, Sean Young, Christopher Walken. I mean, if one were to set
And
up-
let's start from Delhi. Saeed Jafri, Madhur.
Yes, that's
I mean,
right.
they're Delhi-walas. I mean, at least Saeed came from Uttar Pradesh, but they were in Unity Theatre here.
Right.
And there are so many Delhi people who've actually taken part in your plays. And you were one of the first to shoot around Ghaziabad and where else was it? Meerut or somewhere, roundabout.
Maroli.
Yes, and Delhi. Actually made Ramesh Thapar act also in your film as the principal.
Well, I think it's just a great satisfaction, particularly working with the same people like Jennifer, Shashi, Madhur, and Nancy New, who's another actress who we have worked with many, 3-4 times. Also Aparna Sen, who's one of my favorite
Absolutely,
actresses.
yes, indeed.
So I think it's, and of course now Christopher and Nicholas.
Now, what are you going to do next? Do tell us a little bit about the Bostonians.
Well, the Bostonians, again from a Henry James novel, which is set in 1876 in Boston. It's about the feminist movement in 1876 and has Christopher Reeve, Vanessa Redgrave, and we are introducing again a new actress called Madeline Porter. So it's again, the working of a classic novel. The Bostonian is on every university, in every sort of college, in America, in Europe. So I think that again gives you a lift, that you've taken a very good book and the characters are so strong. So that will give an opportunity of making a very good film.
And what is Sachi's son doing in it?
Oh, he's wonderful. He's the still photographer for the film, and everybody, I mean, they just fell for him. His photographs are so beautiful. I think he's going to be one of the best stills man. I want him to be an actor, of course. I want him to be in my next film.
Nicholas, tell us a little bit about your earlier films.
Mine?
Yes.
Well, I've only done 2 films as such before this. One was called City of the Dead, or Bruges la Morte, which was an American production which we filmed in Belgium, with the whole crew totally stoned most of the time, so that was a very good first experience. It's a kind of culture hit in America. It's shown in little cinemas around the place. Disaster in England. Then I made a British Film Institute movie called Europe After the Rain, which was about the Surrealists. I played Tristan Zara. And then it was, I suppose, Brideshead Revisited, which was really for television, but it was all on 35mm, so it was done as a film, which is what James and Ismail saw. So those were the first experiences for me. So this is why I'm very grateful to them both, is that this is my first major film experience.
And Christopher? You've been very modestly saying very little.
No, just I've involved with, I suppose, 9 or 10 films. I mean, again, my work has been theatre and television largely, but most recently, I mean, a film which was shown here recently, I think, called Eye of the Needle, with Donald Sutherland. That was perhaps the only other kind of film I like, apart from Heat and Dust, that I...
And how did you get involved with Ismail and Jim?
Well, I don't know really. I think that you saw Eye of the Needle, didn't you? I think
we saw the Eye of the Needle.
And we met in New York and had lunch, and they very sweetly offered me the part. I jumped at it.
And Robin, do you think, first of all, people were a little amazed that it was, they're so associated with America, Jim being an American and they live in America and so on, that the British arranged the festival, but one of their films was a British entry at Cannes.
Yeah, and the casts, a large proportion of the casts on almost all the films have been Britons. It's been mainly an Indo-British collaboration, with certainly a heavy American involvement as well.
And I think Jim and you told me at Cannes that Yugoslavia had taken some of your films. And
right.
Are you making any inroads into Eastern Europe and at all?
Well, Poland, Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovakia, Hungary, I mean, they have responded to our films. Not Russia. We've been trying to sell Shakespeare Wala to them for the past 15 years. And now, of course, they've shown Heat and Dust Quartet and Shakespeare Wala in Moscow, but we haven't
they have
made...
at a festival?
Oh
or
yes,
I
at the
see.
festival, yes. But we are hoping that they will buy these films eventually.
Now, I think we should end with each of you saying a little about what reactions you found to Heat and Dust in Delhi. Let's start off with you.
With me?
Right,
Nicholas.
sorry.
We'll go right to left.
Someone else, yeah.
I know. We have very little time, just
Right,
sort
fine.
of
Well,
one, two
the
sentences.
enthusiasm is clearly there. All that I've found from the journalists when I've had personal interviews is that they're looking for something in the film that isn't there, basically an anti-Indian feeling within the film. I don't know why they're searching for that, because I can't think of a better example of a movie that actually combines two cultures and looks at them both in an honestly critical way.
Jennifer?
I saw the film both in England and in France. I think there they saw the humour a bit more, but most probably when it's released and you get a non-premiere audience,
Yes.
one will get that reaction.
Ismail?
Well, I think that the people have been very, very enthusiastic, and the journalists who have seen it, and particularly after the press conference, there was a kind of a genuine feeling of like, with the exception of one or two, but of course there are always exceptions. But I think on the whole, people have responded very well.
Sashi?
I can't really say because I wasn't sitting in the
You were
auditorium.
signing too
I
many
was
autographs.
outside actually. I have sat through Heat and Dust in lots of premieres in New York and London and Cannes Film Festival, and I just couldn't sit through it last night. I'm sorry about that. I was outside. I wish there was a bar there, but there wasn't.
Well, I thought it was interesting last night. I mean, again, agreeing with Jennifer and Nicholas, there were moments in the film last night where you thought they weren't sure whether they were being got at. It was interesting because in New York, I mean, it was a largely Indian invited audience, well, not invited audience, but an audience at the premiere in New York, and they laughed from beginning to end. And that, I think there was a slight tension of the importance of the people at
Yes,
last
well,
night's
that
premiere.
always is at the premiere. Well, thank you very, very much, and come back for your 30th birthday?
25th.
25th, yes, of course. Thank you, all of you.